What is persuasion? It is the use of messages to influence an audience. It is basically trying to convince an audience to do or think something specific. Persuasion begins with the source, or the persuader, who has a goal they want to accomplish. They must think of who they need to speak to get what they want, which is the audience, but also have to think of how they are going to go about convincing such an audience through a message. There are many different approaches to the persuasion process, such as the Yale approach, the congruity theory, cognitive dissonance theory, social judgment involvement theory, information integration theory, theory of reasoned action, and the elaboration likelihood model. The Yale approach to persuasion was developed by William McGuire. His model begins with attention. He says that an audience cannot be persuaded by a message that they ignore, so the source or the persuader must make sure that the audience is paying attention. Next, McGuire says that in order for the audience to be persuaded, they must comprehend the message given. Yielding the message entails that the individual has accepted the message of the persuader, and the individual's perceptions or attitude will begin to shift towards the attitude of the message. Retention is the next step and basically measures how long the yielding step lasts. A change in attitude may occur as soon as the message is received, but will this attitude change last? The final step occurs if the retention affects the overall behavior of an individual in their everyday life. Did the commercial for anti-smoking affect their long-term behavior to not smoke? If so, then the persuasion was a success in that it changed the behavior of an individual to not smoke, even though the actual message yielded was smoking is bad. The congruity theory is about consistency and harmony in the mind. It is about balancing out the inconsistencies in our perceptions. If there is incongruity, we are more likely to experience a change in attitude. You see this a lot in celebrity endorsements. Sometimes celebrities endorse products that might not even be good, but it is easier for a consumer to like something that their idol likes than to think of reasons why they disagree with their idol. If I like Jennifer Aniston and she likes Aveeno beauty products, then I'll like Aveeno beauty products. If there was an inconsistency in there, such as me not liking Aveeno beauty products, then my mind will change my attitude. If Jennifer likes it and I like her, then I guess Aveeno isn't that bad. This is probably why celebrities like Kylie Jenner's makeup line sell so well. She has such a huge following that will like her stuff because she's endorsing it, even if the product isn't that great. The cognitive dissonance theory developed by Leon Festinger is a type of consistency theory that can balance more than one idea at once. The mind tries to change feelings of dissonance. Dissonance is about being unbalanced in the mind. For example, the phrases, I smoke cigarettes and cigarettes are bad for you, create dissonance and may lead to an individual to change their behavior to balance it out. This would lead to a consonant thought, I don't smoke cigarettes and cigarettes are bad for you. The dissonance theory is able to handle more than one cognition at a time. Let's say we know these facts about a friend. Lucy is nice and she's a loyal friend, but Lucy does not like my brother. Will I still think the same of Lucy after finding out she does not like my brother? It really depends on the situation. If I'm really close to my brother, then my thoughts about Lucy may go from she's awesome to she's not so great after all. If I'm not close with my brother, then her not liking him may not affect our friendship as much. To make an inconsistent thought consonant, then the phrases might turn into this. I am close with my brother. Lucy does not like my brother. I am not friends with Lucy. Or, I don't like my brother. I am friends with Lucy. Lucy does not like my brother. These changes in attitude based on dissonance create consonants. Social judgment involvement theory. This theory is about how an audience perceives a message based on their anchor points. An anchor point is the attitude and opinions of an individual before they are persuaded. The best way to explain this theory is through an example about water. A professor told two students to come up to the classroom and put their hands in a bucket of water, to which they had no ideas of the temperatures. The first student put their hand in hot water and the second student in cold water. Afterwards, he told them to both put their hands in room temperature water. The student who just came from the hot water says that the water now felt cold, while the student who came from the cold water says the water felt warmer. The third bucket was at room temperature, but because each student had their own anchor points or places of origin, they both perceived the last bucket of water differently. Based on an audience anchor points prior to listening to a persuasion speech, they will either accept or reject the message or fall into one of three zones. The latitude of acceptance, in which an individual accepts the idea or message, the latitude of rejection, in which the individual will find the idea unacceptable, or the latitude of non-commitment, in which the individual believes that the idea is neither acceptable or unacceptable because the individual feels unrelated to the message. The information integration theory developed by Norman Anderson claims that attitudes are formed and changed by combining new information with existing opinions. A new piece of information has two qualities, value and weight. New information is weighted and stacked up against an existing cognition. For example, if Tanya tells you Tony has long hair, the value of this information depends on if you think long hair is attractive or unattractive. If you do find it unattractive, then maybe you'll be less interested in Tony. But if you have heard great things about Tony, then finding out he has long hair, that piece of information may not be as important to you as Tony being a good guy. The theory of reasoned action was developed by Martin Fishbein and Isaac Eisgen. This theory places more attention on actual behavior rather than attitude. It is a constant battle between behavior and norms. If a friend is trying to get you to go see a movie with them and you have heard good things about it, then your attitude towards the movie will make it easier to go and see it. If you heard that the movie is not so good, then your attitude towards it is negative and you are more likely to reject your friend's offer. The theory of reasoned action makes society norms come into play. Let's say you reject the offer and decide to stay home. Your friend might say, "But this movie theater is so cool." Or, "You'll be so bored at home. Everyone goes out on the weekends." The norms of all the other people around you would push you to go see the movie, if the norms of society have more value than your own interests. In the elaboration likelihood model, attitudes help guide decisions. Completely understanding the message does not necessarily mean the individual is persuaded. They still might completely disagree with the message even though they comprehend what it means. Individuals also might not even completely pay attention to the message in order to be persuaded. Let's say a persuasive message is about not drinking and driving. An individual might see the title and stop paying attention to the message, but may remember that their uncle died in a driving accident involved with drinking. They are persuaded to not drink and drive, which was the goal of the message, but the individual only saw the title and paid no attention to the rest of the message. In this model, there are two routes to persuasive influence, central and peripheral. Central routes require complete understanding of the idea of the message. The individual is an active participant of the process of persuasion and must have the motivation and ability to think about the ideas and concepts of the message. The peripheral route happens when the individual is distracted or decides to agree with the message because of reasons outside of the actual ideas. If the individual thinks the source of the persuasive message is an expert and knows what they are talking about, they could agree with the message just because they seem smart. Or if the speaker is attractive, the listener might agree with them just because of the fact and completely overlook what the message is about. People who take the peripheral route do not understand the content of the persuasive message. Even though all of these theories might have different ways of going about persuasion, they are all similar in that the persuader must think about the audience just as much as the message in order to gain the interest and be successful in the persuasion process.